Hello and welcome to Itentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to share our NextGen add-on solution, RefundManager, with you today. My name is Chelsea Grover and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Itentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded. We'll send out a copy of this recording to you within the next week, along with a copy of the slides for your reference. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Itentive, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in NextGen healthcare. Our goal in life is to make delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their NextGen software investment. We're passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything NextGen. And along with RefundManager, we have another add-on productivity solution for NextGen, ChartGuard, which creates PDF backups of your patient charts. Next, I wanted to mention that next week we'll be presenting an educational webinar on the 2018 QPP Final Rule. The Quality Payment Program is highly complex, and the 2018 Final Rule clocks in at 1,653 pages. Don't worry though, our subject matter expert understands it all and wants to help you understand the program changes as easily as possible. Join us for this webinar to get a better grasp on the Final Rule and the impact it'll have on your practice. I'll be sending an invitation out for those later today. Okay, so back to today's webinar. For audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone is going to remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Tom Seco is Itentive's Business Development Manager, and Joel Schultz is the Director of Product Solutions at Itentive. So Tom, I'm going to pass the webinar off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. And thank you for everyone for attending our webinar about RefundManager and how to streamline and automate the credit balance and the refund check processing within your organization. I'm going to start out by going through the presentation, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joel Schultz, and Joel is going to go through the demonstration of RefundManager for you. So this is an agenda. What we're going to do is you'll learn about what RefundManager is and why practices buy RefundManager. You'll learn about how it works, and we'll go through a demonstration, like I said, and then give you a brief overview of Itentive at the end, and then be able to answer any questions that you have through the chat box, like Chelsea had just mentioned to you. So the purpose of RefundManager is really to make your job easier. And we do that by streamlining and automating the refund process. We look at that process from start to finish, and we look for points where we could streamline the process and automate the process. We look for points where we could eliminate data entry. We look for points where we could make it, in the way that we present the information to you, much easier for you to view the information as well as make decisions with that information. Several different accounting applications to eliminate the data entry points. The overall goal of RefundManager is to increase productivity. We went back and talked to our clients who use RefundManager and asked them what benefits has it given to them. And they came back and said that they've been able to reallocate resources to other areas of billing accounts receivable, and that they've been able to spend less time sending money out of the organization and spend more time bringing money into the organization. At the same time, they came back with other snippets of other comments that came back, and here's some snippets of those comments. I won't go into each one of them, but I will focus your attention on a couple of them. The first one is the first bullet that says reduce from days down to hours now. That shows that there's a productivity improvement. And then the fourth bullet, pays for itself in time savings alone. That shows that there is a return on investment. There are risks that are associated with carrying credit balances in your system, and those risks span all of these areas. With Medicare, Medicare does have penalties that if you do not get credit balances back to them in a timely manner, they can suspend Medicare payments and start to invoke some fines. Insurance contracts usually have clauses in them as well with regards to getting credit balances back to them. And if you do not do that in a timely manner, you can be in violation of the contract and subject yourself to further audits as well. There are state laws governing carrying credit balances and not getting the credits back to the individuals within a timely manner. It varies from state to state. So here's a couple of examples of some states and what their rules are. California requires you to pay interest after 60 days following an overpayment. In Oregon, after 3 years, the credit balances have to be considered unclaimed property and then reported back to the state. And most states have unclaimed property laws. It can lead to a class action suit sometimes. Some organizations think that credit balances carrying them, if they go unclaimed, can come back into the organization as profit or as additional revenue. And just as we learned about with the state laws, the Medicare and insurance, that's not the case. And there is a potential for fraud by carrying numerous credit balances in your system. We talked to prospects and clients who have carried thousands of instances of credit balances in their system, and those thousands of instances tallied up to be, $50,000, $100,000, several $100,000 worth of credit balances. And when you're getting into those types of numbers, it can lead to unethical type of activity occurring. So using a product like RefundManager to manage your credit balances allows you to reduce the risks that are associated with carrying the credit balances. These next few slides I'm going to go through are talking about the credit handling process and the refund process. In this particular slide, it shows a typical process without using RefundManager. You typically handle refunds or credit balances in a reactive manner or a proactive manner. In a reactive manner, I mean somebody calls up and says, a patient calls up and says, I have a credit balance on my account and I'd like to have a refund check issued to me. In a proactive manner, you are printing off a report and periodically going through that report to process the credit balances. You might be doing it on a weekly basis. You might be doing it on every couple weeks or once a month, but you're going through it in a proactive manner. In either case, whether you're doing it in a reactive manner or a proactive manner, you're going to go through a series of steps to process that credit balance or understand what makes up that credit balance. You're going to look at the encounter details. You're going to look at the transaction details. You're going to look at the account details, and then you're going to decide what to do with that credit balance. You're going to decide whether to issue a refund, or you're going to decide to put it aside and do you have to do further research because you don't have time to go through all the details to discern what's making up that credit balance. Or you may decide, I need to apply this credit maybe to an account that has an open balance on it. If you have 250 credit balances that you need to process, you're going through 4 steps for each of those credit balances. So it can become step intensive when you are processing credit balances and processing quite a few of them in one sitting. At the end of that process, when you have identified the credit balances that are to be issued as refunds, you need to get that information over to accounting. And how that information gets to accounting varies from practice to practice, health center to health center. It gets over there via word of mouth. It gets over there on a spreadsheet. It gets over there via email. It gets over there by a stack of papers dropped on somebody's desk. Somehow it gets over there, and when it gets there, the accountant has to take that information and enter it into the accounts payable system. So they have to manually enter in the name of the check recipient, the amount of the check, the address of the recipient, the city, the state, the zip, and some other information as well. So again, for each check that you're printing and issuing, you need to go through a series of steps to get that information into accounting. Once all the checks have been printed, some organizations enter that check information as far as printed check number, check date, check amount, and they enter that information back into NextGen. Some organizations do not do that, some organizations do. But you can see from start to finish, it can be a very step-intensive process. So we looked at that process, and look for ways where we could apply technology to the process to make it much easier for the individuals to make decisions, as well as for the individuals to eliminate the data entry points along the way. So on the front end, in the billing side, where you are looking at the credit balances and going through all the details to determine what makes up that credit balance and what you should do with that credit balance, in the way that we present the information to the individual makes it much easier for decision making on what to do with that credit balance, whether to issue a refund or to apply that credit to an account that has an open balance on it. And we also make it easier for you to task it out for further research into the work log manager of NextGen. Also, we give filters and search mechanisms to make it much easier to find the credit balances on patient accounts. And this is what this front end piece is what we really call the streamlining piece of the process. Then we looked at how that information gets over to accounting, and because we integrate with the various accounting applications, we can eliminate data entry by moving that and putting that information into a file and then moving it over to the accounting application. So really all the accountant has to do is make sure that there's check paper in the printer and that the checks are printing out, because we eliminate the data entry of having to enter in the check recipient's name, the address, the city, the state, the zip, the check amount. Then on the back end, we automate the process of bringing the printed check information back over into NextGen and updating the patient chart with that check information as far as check number, check date, and check amount. So streamlining on the front end and then automation on the back end where we eliminate data entry points along the way. And you'll see this in the demonstration as Joe goes through the demonstration of RefundManager. There are 3 modules that make up RefundManager, and as Joe goes through the demonstration, he'll talk about the Credit Scout module and show you what that is. He'll go through the Batch Detective module and go through the Importer module as well. The Credit Scout module is the one that's going to be used by the billing department to identify the credit balances as far as what patient accounts have the credit balances on them, and then be able to decide what to do with that credit balance, whether to issue a refund or to apply that credit to an account that has an open balance on it, or to task it out for further research. So those 3 actions can be done, are done within the Credit Scout module. The Batch Detective module is the module that's going to bring the check information over into the accounting application. And then the Importer module is the module that's going to bring the printed check information, check number, check date, check amount, back over into NextGen and update the patient chart so it's available there as well. And like I said, you'll see these 3 modules in the demonstration. The benefits of RefundManager, well, it reduces time and labor for issuing refunds. It applies the credit balances to other encounters in the practice very quickly. So it eliminates having to create transactions to do all of that. You can task it out for further research, as I said, in the work log manager. It integrates with many accounting applications to reduce data entry time as well as to reduce data entry errors. RefundManager is what I'll call self-documenting, meaning that it creates notes along the way of the process, so you can see at any one point in time, any one point of time, where you are in the process and the notes that are created along the way. It can, as I mentioned, move the check numbers over to the NextGen patient chart so that the NextGen staff has the ability to see when payments have been issued and refund checks have been issued. So the calls that come in from individuals that say, you know, I called up and I had a credit on my account and I wanted to have a refund check issued to me. That call doesn't have to really go back to the back office. It can stay at the front desk and they can look it up on the patient chart and say, oh yes, it was sent out on this day and we send it to this particular address. RefundManager is multi-practice aware. So if you have multiple practices set up in your NextGen environment, you'll be able to take a look at a guarantor's financial picture across the practices, such as, in this case, an example of a physician's office and a surgery center. If you had a patient that had an account set up in each location or each practice, you could take a look at the financial picture and look at the credit balance history across all those practices. You can apply credit balances. You can apply credits between the practices. So in a multi-practice, if a patient has a credit in their account in the clinic, but then they have an open balance in the surgery center, you can move it over to that, apply that credit to the surgery center. And then we have created the optional capability to have workflow set up, meaning some organizations have individuals who can request a refund and then have other individuals have the responsibility to approve the refunds. So we have incorporated and developed a workflow that allows that to take care of as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Joe Schultz, and Joe's going to take you through the demonstration of RefundManager.
All right, great. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that a lot. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon in the holiday season here to see RefundManager. I'm going to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes taking you on a quick tour of the current release of RefundManager. You may have experienced a bit of change here as we switched over to my desktop. If you have any problems, just message us in the question window and let us know if you have any trouble with the visuals. What you should be seeing right now is NextGen Practice Management. And we start here because RefundManager, when we install it on your system, acts really as an extension of Practice Management. So it coexists in the same database. We install it into the add-on menu. And if you haven't seen this before, we'd activate it during the install. So right from NextGen Practice Management, you can get into RefundManager if you have the right permissions and begin to do these steps that Tom was talking about. Now, Tom mentioned 3 modules that were in the RefundManager. So we'll start with the Credit Scout, which is the piece where we're looking into NextGen for credit balances and deciding what do we want to do with those. Do we want to move them around? Do we want to refund them? Is the encounter or account just a mess and we want to put it in the work log to look at later? So we'll take a quick look at that. We have the second module, which takes those refunds that we created from those credits and it sends them out to the accounting system without your accounting staff having to do all that data entry of vendors and payments and GL mapping and so on. So we have direct interfaces to a number of accounting systems. We have file-based interfaces to a number of accounting systems. Again, if you're interested, reach out to us and we'll reach out to you and let us know what accounting system you have and we can tell you what the solution is. So the batch detective is going to be our second module we go into that'll move the information out from NextGen to the accounting system. And then Tom mentioned a last step, which is the import, and that'll bring the check information back from the accounting system into NextGen and update the transactions. And we'll see all this as we go ahead and step through. So I'm going to start in the Credit Scout. And again, the Credit Scout is our tool for looking for credit balances in NextGen. So it's much like you might run a credit report, except this one you can interact with and say what you want to do with the credits right there. And then RefundManager will go out and build those transactions for you. Similar to NextGen, we've built our screens so that they work like you're used to in practice management. So we have our search criteria at the top, we have our results at the bottom, we use the right mouse menu. So for those people who are used to working in practice management, again, there should be a nice flow into using RefundManager. The search criteria at the top has been added by our clients over the years. We started creating RefundManager about 12, almost 13 years ago now. And our clients have come to us and said, hey, you know what? It'd be great if we could search by encounter number. Sometimes we just have a specific encounter we want to do, or hey, you know what? We're trying to catch up on our old refunds and we don't want to get 100,000 results back. Can you break it up by date range? Tom mentioned we have some filters, and the filters are ways of just better qualifying the credits that you're getting back and eliminating some of the noise. So we have a set of filters that work on the charges. If you really think about the balance that's on the charge, is it a credit? Is it a debit? Is it zero? So we have filters that work on those. And in conjunction, you can select filters that work on the transactions. Now, especially for refunds, where this combination is great is that if you do have credits on the charges and the payments are actually more than the total charge amount, then there's a pretty good chance you might have a true credit and a refund. If the payments were not greater, but you had a credit balance, then that would be an indication that someone just maybe went crazy with an adjustment and you have to go tweak that adjustment instead of refunding it. So as part of your training and setup, we'll go into these into more detail, but the key is they help to eliminate the noise so that you can focus on what you want to do with those credits and the validity of those credits. So I'm going to go ahead and click Find and pull up some test data in our database here. And I got a number of different results, and I'm going to dive into a few of these that are important and show how RefundManager works. At the top level here, we're seeing the guarantor. All right, now if this was a guarantor that existed in multiple practices and you had access to those multiple practices, the great thing is you'd see credits across those practices that you had access to. Okay, but in this case, the data is in one practice, and RefundManager works great if you're a single practice or if you are multi-practice, either a CBO situation with multiple clients, or as Tom mentioned, a big one we see is the practice and surgery center, where sometimes the practice will take a deposit for the surgery center only because the patient hasn't been to the surgery center yet, so they don't have an account there, and then later on they'll move it over. So I'm going to start with Tiffany. And I'm going to expand down below this guarantor level here, and we'll see the account level, and then we'll see who's getting the refunds. Okay, in this case, they're going to Aetna and United Health. If we want to go down even further, we can go down to the encounter level and see the encounter or encounters that are making up that refund, and even down to the charges with credits on them. Okay, so if there's several charges with credits, but you only want to refund one of them, you can just pick that one. In this case, we only have one charge with a credit. If we want to see more information about this particular encounter, we can click on the cell with the encounter number in it. And by the way, most of these fields here become self-evident after a while, but if you're having trouble and are unsure, we can turn headers on for these, and we can see, yes, this is the encounter number here. What most clients do, because it makes it a little cleaner, is once they get used to where the fields are, they go ahead and turn that off, and it's a little more pleasing to look at. But if we want to research this a little more from within RefundManager, we can click on the encounter, and it'll show us something similar to the transaction view in NextGen. You'll see the charge and the transactions against it. Okay, so these top two are charges, and then we can see, yeah, the payment was more than that. So this might be one that we want to go ahead and refund. Additionally, if we want to look at a broader level, we can right mouse, again, similar to how we navigate in practice management, and we can pick screens that mimic the financial summary and account summary in NextGen. That'll give you a much wider view of what's going on. Cool thing about our financial summary is that when you use that, if someone's in multiple practices, it'll show you that over the multiple practices. Okay, so the whole key is to give you tools in RefundManager to help you make that decision on what you want to do with the credit balance. In this case, for our demonstration here, I'm going to go ahead and pick to refund it. Now, if I just wanted to refund the Aetna one, I could pick a lower checkbox. If I want to refund everything, the Aetna and the United Health credits, then I can pick up higher, and everything underneath for that checkbox will be created. So in this case, it's going to create two refunds, one for United Health and one for Aetna. And I'll show you how that works and how that's going to save you tons of time in just a few moments here. I want to pick another one. Okay, and this one is going to be a little different because it goes to the guarantor. Again, as part of my evaluation, I can click to see the transaction view. Yeah, there was, a payment, and somehow the patient also sent us a payment. So it looks like it's probably a true refund. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one to refund also. And then the last one I'm going to use for our demonstration today, our walkthrough, is this one at the bottom for Jennifer. And I'm going to click on that, and this one's unique in that there's several different encounters with credit balances on them. Now again, I'd go ahead and do my research either by clicking on the encounter number or bringing up the account summary and validate that these would all be valid refunds. For simplicity here and keeping things moving along, we're just going to say yes, they are. And I'm going to pick these ones to go out too. So for Jennifer, we have 3 separate refunds that are going to be created in NextGen. The cool part is when we send it out to our accounting system, we're going to roll those up or let the accounting system roll it up. Today for the accounting system, we're going to use QuickBooks. But again, there's a dozen of them we support directly and several others on top of that we can work with you on interfaces for. Now that's refunds. I picked some of these for refunds. But let's say we want to do distributions. Well, one option I have is to go back and pick the distribution filters, and that'll give us the ones that are good candidates for distributions. But again, for speed, I see I have a couple of my distribution patients set up here, and I'm going to go ahead and expand one of these, and we'll go ahead and step through it. So on a distribution, okay, I can use the distribution filter. That'll let me know these are candidates for distributions. I see I have a credit here. Okay, if I want to see more detail about, gosh, what would RefundManager do with that distribution, I can right mouse and do a distribution preview. And it's going to come up and say, basically, to the left of the mouse here is where it's going to get the money from, and to the right of the mouse is where it's going to. So if we look at any one of these lines, it's looking at this $295 credit, okay, encounter 1213, SIM 99-215, and it's going to move it over to 1214, one of the other charges, and negate the 236. And then second, it's going to take the remaining $59 and move it over here. So RefundManager is going to do that work for us by default, working oldest to newest. Well, let's say we wanted to pay off the $67 first. Well, we can instruct RefundManager to take a different course of action by picking right mouse, distribution matching, and then we can pick our credit, pick which debit we want to apply it against, and pair them up. Okay, so now we've done the $67 first, and I've been left with a credit of $228 and a balance over here of $236. So if I want, I can match those ones up too, and that'll leave the patient with $8 due. Okay, so RefundManager for these distributions, it can do them automatically, oldest to newest, or you can manually control how it's going to set up those transactions in NextGen. So this other one that we have above here, I'll click distribution, and we'll do our preview, see what it's going to do. There's only one line anyways of work it's going to do, so there's probably no point in doing it manually. Okay, so we've picked several of these to be moved around, where we have credits that are candidates to stay in the practice, and we've picked several of these that we want to refund out. Now, RefundManager hasn't done any of the work yet, so what we're going to do is just right mouse and tell it to process items. It comes up with the processing screen. From here, I can pick an existing batch, and I can have separate ones for my distributions and refunds. I can create batches from in here if I haven't created one yet in NextGen, and we can keep using that batch until we either delete it or post it. So because I haven't done this before, I'm going to set my transaction code parameters. If you think about it, when you're in NextGen, right, and you're creating a transaction, you have to set your transaction codes. So I set for my refunds, refund, I'm going to use refund patient insurance. I'm going to use refund insurance. For my distributions, I'm going to use transfer patient payment. And the first one is for distributions within the practice. And again, if you're single practice, you can set all three of these to the same value. But if you're multi-practice, then the next two are, how are you going to get the money out of the practice? I might do a refund and write the check to the other practice so that it'll move the money. And then I'll use transfer payment, patient payment to accept the money into the new practice. But for our demonstration here, it's really this one that we care about for the distributions, and these two we care about for the refunds. So it'll remember these parameters, so you don't have to set those every time, and it'll remember the batch, like I said, up until it's posted. So we click Start, and RefundManager will go ahead and create 6 refunds for us. Okay, those insurance refunds, those multiple encounters, if you think about all the movement you'd have to do in NextGen and entering of dollar amounts and stuff, well, it just did that in a snap for us. It's going to verify we want to do the distributions. It's going to show us what we have queued up to be done. Okay, so here's our $50 one that was a single line, and here's our 67 and then the 228. And it'll go ahead and create those transactions in NextGen for you too. And this is really the streamlining Tom was talking about, where you make the decisions, but RefundManager does the heavy lifting for you. It does the work. So now we have those refunds and distributions in NextGen, okay, and the work's been done for you. So at some point now in NextGen, we'd eventually come in here and post our batch. So I'm going to go ahead and take our batch from today, and then we'll jump into a couple of these once the batch is posted and show you what it looks like. So, and we still allow NextGen to post it just because that's a good kind of control to have in the financials. Everything RefundManager does on your behalf in NextGen looks like you did it. It's tagged with your kind of who when information. The input looks to NextGen, a transaction from RefundManager looks like a transaction you do yourself. So our batch is posted. So let's go ahead and we'll look at the distribution first. So I'm going to take this account that has a couple of them, this 290. And we'll come over here for this chart, this patient guarantor. And we'll see on the account summary, the net is 0 over the account because we're moving a plus and minus of the same amount. If we double click on it, we can see, yeah, here's the 2 encounters, here's the money that's moved, and it even puts a note in here, yeah, it took 67 and moved it to 1215, and this other encounter got the 67 from 1213. All right, so RefundManager is building all this for you. In fact, we can go ahead and jump down to the encounter and see what's going on there. So if I come in here, we can see here's the transaction that was created for us, and in the note, it put the batch in there so that we have record of that. Also, it creates an encounter note so that you have documentation that this one was done by RefundManager. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at the refunds. So we'll jump in here and pick one of the encounters. We'll pick one of Jennifer's. And similar to what we saw before, the transaction's been created, the batch name is here. We have our note for the refund being created. Again, documentation is to, who did it and when and so on. Now, what we want to do at this time is get the refunds over to the accounting system. Now, this can be done the same day. It can be done several days later, depending on your workflow. Either way works fine. So we'll come back into RefundManager, And we'll use the batch detective to search for NextGen batches that contain one or more refund transactions. Oh, let me make sure I post it here. No, I created this batch yesterday in anticipation of the demo, so I used today's date, so I just had it back down a day. All right, so here's our batch with our 6 refunds in it. So I'm going to go ahead and click export. It's going to give me a consolidation screen. Some accounting systems do this automatically. Some don't do such a good job. So we give you the option to consolidate refunds in RefundManager. And it's all these 3 for Jennifer can be sent over as a single check. Now, this is the part the accounting people love because RefundManager is either going to real time or via file give you the setup for the vendors, okay, those addresses and people the refund needs to go to, and also the payments, all right? So all that just went over in a matter of seconds. So this is part of the automation piece. The other part was streamlining. This is automation where everything just happens and you don't have to worry about it. So we'll click yes, that we're done. We'll go over to our accounting system. We'll see we have some checks ready to be printed. Okay, here's the consolidated one for Jennifer. All right, here's some of the other ones we have. So just like your accounting people do today, they're going to go in and print their batch of checks through their normal process. They're going to handle their reprints and stuff in the accounting system, just like normal. Going to tell it everything printed okay. Now in the accounting system, we have a check date, we have a check number. Well, let's go ahead and get that back into NextGen. And again, that's just as easy as sending it over to the accounting system. So instead of us doing a lot of work to send it over and get it back, we're going to come into RefundManager again, same day, different day, it's okay. We're going to go into our import tool. And instead of you having to enter the data about the checks, whether it's 4 checks or 400 checks into NextGen, we're going to right mouse import and let RefundManager do it. Now, keep in mind, the difference between this number is there were 6 refunds, but we consolidated it down into 4 checks. But when we put it back in NextGen, we got to expand it out and get all 6 of them. So now if we come back here into NextGen, I haven't refreshed my screen yet, but I'm going to switch encounters and switch back. We'll see now you have the check number, check date, check amount in NextGen. And since it was rolled up to a single check, we'll see across these encounters, they all share that information. Also, when we export it out, it gave you another encounter note letting you know that it was exported, the date and time, and also the address that was in play when it was exported. And that's important because RefundManager has refund address capabilities and NextGen has refund address capabilities. So we kind of go down in a hierarchy and ultimately use the end original address if no refund addresses are specified. So that's taken care of for you automatically. So we've talked about streamlining and automating. So again, the Credit Scout, which is where you start looking at NextGen, streamlines the process. You research, you pick what you want to do with checkboxes, and then you process, and it creates all the transactions in NextGen. The Batch Detective automates, it gets the information to the accounting system without them having to spend tons of time doing data entry. And then we can bring the check information back without you having to spend tons of time on the NextGen side doing data entry. So that's a quick run through of RefundManager. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Tom now, who's going to cover some more details about RefundManager and also about Itentive.
Well, thank you, Joe, for going through that with us. And showing us RefundManager from start to finish. Generally, people ask us what it takes to implement RefundManager. And here's what it takes. It's about 90 minutes to physically install the software in your environment. And then we have a series of training videos that we ask you to go through. There's about 4 of them. They're about 10 to 11 minutes in length each. And then we also give you the RefundManager user guide to read through. Once you go through the training videos and the user guide, what we'll do then is schedule a time to hold a question and answer call with a RefundManager specialist to answer any questions that you have with regards to what you saw in the training videos and what you have read in the user guide. Once you get through that, then what we'll do is schedule a time to train you in your test environment on RefundManager. So our RefundManager specialist will take you through training, online training in your environment. And once you get through that process and you feel comfortable with using RefundManager in your test environment, what we'll then do is point it over to your production environment, and we'll be on the phone with you there as well, going through the first couple batches of credits in your production environment and addressing any issues that might come up, answering any questions that come up as well through that process. Now just a little bit about Itentive and who we are. We were founded in 2003, and our mission is to create additional value for your NextGen investment. We know when you purchased NextGen, it was a major investment, and that investment probably has grown over the years with regards to upgrades and additional hardware acquisition as well. So we want to help you get as much value out of that investment as possible. We have 19 years of experience with NextGen, and we have 77 employees in the company, most of which are consultants that travel from practice to practice, health center to health center, working with each organization to get that value out of NextGen as much as possible. If you take the 2003 to 19 years, they do not add up, and the reason for that is Itentive started out as the IT department for a healthcare organization. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, when the business mantra back then was focus on what you do best and outsource the rest, the medical organization was going to outsource the IT group. Well, the leaders of the IT group said, well, if you want to do that, what we'd like to do is form our own company and provide services back to you. So they agreed to do that, and from that point forward, we have worked with over 350, 400 clients that use NextGen, and during this time frame, we become a strategic partner with NextGen as well. We have we can provide any one of these solutions here as a point solution or coupled together as an integrated solution. So we can do implementations of NextGen. We have a group, like as I mentioned, consultants that can do process improvements and workflow improvements. We have a group of technology folks that can provide template enhancements. We can provide upgrades to NextGen as well as provide support for NextGen and support for your IT group. We have a group of technology folks that can do IT managed services, meaning that we can support your IT infrastructure, your desktops, your laptops, your servers, your local area networks, your network infrastructure. We also have our own data center, so we can do hosting of your IT environment in our data center. And we have a group of developers that develop productivity tools, which is what we talked about today. RefundManager is one of these productivity tools, as well as our ChartGuard solution, which Chelsea mentioned in the beginning. And that solution is our business continuity solution, our downtown preparedness solution that basically runs every night, and it goes out and pulls the patient chart information for each of the patients that are scheduled. Packages it up into a PDF file and pushes that information out to a desktop or a computer at each location, so that patient information and the appointment listing for that location for that day is there locally resident, in case that office location loses access to NextGen. If it loses access to NextGen, then the providers and staff can go to that PC and begin to see their patients using the current chart information that's there. So it allows for a minimal disruption to your operations while the IT department is trying to get NextGen back in line. We also have ChartGuard Archiver, which is a long-term storage version of ChartGuard with patient charts. For those of you that use Phreesia as the solution for allowing your patients to check in, we also have developed an interface that to NextGen allows for updating of the clinical information as well from the tablet. And then for those of you that may use Transworld for collection services, we've integrated NextGen in the point that we can seamlessly pass files between NextGen and Transworld in order to lower the cost of collections. So a little bit about our productivity tools that we've developed over the years. Now it's time for any questions that you have. As Chelsea had mentioned, you can go ahead and enter your questions into the chat box at the bottom of the screen there, and we'll answer any questions for you.
Great, thank you so much,
I'll turn it over to Chelsea now.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Joe. Great demo. Again, questions can be entered in the questions box. It looks like we only have a couple, so if you have questions, we're going to have time to answer them. So feel free to enter them in when they occur to you. So first question, what's the installation process like?
Okay, I'll go ahead and take that one. This is Joe. The installation itself is pretty straightforward. What we do is we start with a kickoff call and we pull in the stakeholders, both on the technology side and the accounting side, in addition to the NextGen side. And then we coordinate just all the moving parts. The actual install of RefundManager itself usually takes about 90 minutes. And then we add additional time for any accounting integration, such as if you have additional software on the accounting side that's needed, or if you have a complex GL mapping, we'll work with you to determine the best strategy for setting that up in RefundManager. So we can move as fast or slow as you'd like based on your timeframes. Normally that kickoff call comes within 2 weeks after signing up for RefundManager.
Great, thanks, Joe. Next question, do you support newer versions of NextGen?
We do. As part of your maintenance for RefundManager, we keep RefundManager current with the supported accounting systems and obviously with NextGen too. We've been doing this for 12 years now with NextGen. RefundManager was actually written for EPM 3.4 and moved up to the various versions of 5, and we continue to keep it compatible. So if you're doing a major upgrade of NextGen, just open a ticket with our support desk and we can go ahead and help you get RefundManager loaded into that test environment too for yourselves.
Thanks, Joe. Next question. We run NextGen through Citrix. Is this going to be an issue?
One of the great things about RefundManager is that it was written using the same technologies as NextGen. So just like NextGen runs on PCs and Citrix and remote desktop and all those great tools that are available for deploying applications, so does RefundManager. We have clients doing it either way, and some have a hybrid and they're doing it both ways, both on Citrix and on PCs. So yes, we do support that.
Thanks, Joe. Next question. I'm questioning the address for insurance refunds. Can you review how the system knows which address to use, or is this chosen by the accounting side of the practice?
No, that's a great question. And back in 2005, when we created RefundManager, NextGen didn't have support for refund addresses, right? On the payer, it just had the address. On the patient, it just had the address. So what we did is there's an address book built into RefundManager that allows you to store multiple addresses per payer or patient. So you can have those alternates available to you. And when you select to do the refund, you can select an address out of the RefundManager address book. There's a cell you click on to do that. Now, if you choose not to do that, what we'll do next is we'll go into NextGen and look for a NextGen refund address. Okay, and if there's not a refund address there, then we'll just go to the normal address that's on the guarantor or on the payer in NextGen. So it's kind of that hierarchy, RefundManager address book, NextGen refund address, and then the default address in NextGen.
Thank you, Joe. And it looks like this might be our last question, unless anybody is typing as we speak. How often is RefundManager updated?
We do one feature release per year. However, there are multiple updates as we work with clients to add new accounting systems and such. So if there's a major feature update, we'll send you an email, and we give you a website where you can go ahead and get in and look at the latest release notes and download updates of Refund Manager. So we're in the process of making that available to our existing client base, and then new clients, we start out giving you that information so you can look and see if this is something you might want to upgrade to, or you can keep moving along on the current version if that's meeting your needs.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And it looks like we have another question. What are the costs involved to get in this program?
So the costs are, there's three components to the pricing. There's a license fee, which is a one-time fee. There's an installation and training fee, which is a one-time fee. And then there is the software maintenance fee, which is your only recurring fee, and that's an annual recurring fee. We have three license levels: a standard license, a professional license, and an enterprise level license. And pricing ranges from as on the low side of $6,000 to as high as $35,000.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'll be sending out an email within the next week with a link to view the recording if you want to view the recording or take a look at the slides. You see both Tom and Joe's information up on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out to them if you have any questions or if something occurs to you later. Otherwise, you can also reply back to my emails, and I'll make sure that your questions get to the right people to get answered. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.